Hey guys, this is Edgar of Tech Command Repairs. I'm bringing to you another repair. We have a tear down and also a cleaning of this PS4. This is the PS4 1200 series. Looking on the bottom here, we can see that for the model number. But this one just needs a cleaning, but this system is the one that actually has the eject and power buttons that actually click. They're physical buttons, not that tap button. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to remove the TH security screws from the back of the PS4. They're usually covered by black tape, but get a T8 Torx bit and remove those. Once we have those removed, we're going to remove that same bottom cover. So we're going to flip it over, exposing the bottom side. It's going to pull up from the two back corners. Might be hard. Sometimes you may need to use a spudger or any type of slim tool to get between the case and the body and just slightly squeeze out the sides and it'll end up popping open. Once we have it popped, you'll feel that and just lift up and the bottom should open up. Now that we have it open, we're just going to take a microfiber cloth, air duster, and just wipe down any dust that we have inside here. The next thing we'll focus on is removing the power supply, but first we have to remove this metal shield. In the corners, there's going to be two Phillips 1 screwdrivers that are here. They're long, so unscrew those, pull the screws out, and then you can remove this little metal shield. Now that the shield's removed, we have three T8 screws that hold in the power supply itself. We're just going to remove those and put those to the side. Next, we'll remove the power cable, the 5-volt cable that goes from the power supply into the board. Just slightly grab the wires themselves and wiggle them side to side to remove it. Don't rush it, just take your time. Once we have that out, we'll pop out the power supply itself, lift up by the tabs the T8 screws were in, and you should get it to pop up. From here, we'll remove all the ribbon cables that connect to the disk drive. The middle one has a brown clip in it. You want to use both fingers to lift it up slightly. You'll feel a slight release, don't break it. And then you can remove that bigger cable. Once that cable is removed, then you can remove the smaller cable on the side. Those just pull up. So only one in the middle actually has a clasp that holds it in. The other two you just pull up or push down. Now we're going to remove the antenna for the Wi-Fi. You just get under this connector with your screwdriver or anything flat and just wiggle it until it comes off. Just be very careful not to damage this. We're going to turn it over and deal with the top side of the PS4 now. So we're going to take off the cover that covers the hard drive, just slide it down, both hands. We're going to wipe this, clean out any dust that may be there. We'll also wipe down any dust that we see on top of the system. So what we're going to do is remove the hard drive. Use a Phillips 1 screwdriver. It's the only screwdriver that actually has the PlayStation logos on it. Unscrew it, and then remove the hard drive. Now we have two T8 screws that hold down the top of the top casing. Remove those and put those to the side. Now we're going to remove the top cover. So using both hands, we're going to pull up and you'll feel a release. Once that release is felt, you can remove the top cover off, slide it backwards to unhook it from the back, clean that out with your microfiber or your air duster, depending on how bad it may be, but clean that out. Just make sure you get all the dust out. We'll wipe down the system now from what was exposed to be some dust that'll be there. Just wipe all that down with your microfiber cloth. Be very gentle with everything. Now we're going to remove the front power button. So this has a little clip on top of it. You want to slightly raise that clip. You see it'll be in the hole, and you just want to pull it out. Be gentle, don't rush it. It's a little clip that clips into the hole that keeps it from falling out. Just slightly raise that and you'll be able to pull this button out. Now we're going to remove all the screws from the top. We're going to start with the black screws that are on top here. So if you've never done this before, use a marker, use a pen just to mark off where the black screws are. And remove all the T8 screws that are on here. So pretty much every other spot that doesn't have a black mark in it is going to probably be a T8 screw. Once you have the T8 screws removed from there, we're going to remove the T8s in the back on this little black plastic piece. So once we have it unscrewed, we're going to remove it and clean that out of any dust as well. Just wipe it down with the microfiber cloth. Make sure we get all the little holes that are on the side. We don't want any dust blocking that up. Now there's going to be a little metal piece here. This is what one side of the power supply, one of those long Phillips screws into. So don't lose this. It will be the only piece in this system that looks like this, and it goes in this one spot. So we'll need that in order to screw in the power supply. So put that aside. Now we'll remove the black Phillips screwdrivers. Use a Phillips one and just remove those. So one tip is, if you don't mark these or you forget where they go, just remember all those black screwdrivers go into a metal. So like you'll see the difference if you look inside these holes. It'll go screw into a metal one. The T8s screw into a plastic. You'll see a black plastic or you see a silver metal piece that they screw into. You'll be able to tell the difference. Now we'll remove two Phillips screws that are at the edge of these cases. They'll be metal. These are more silver, not black, but these silver ones with a rounded top, they go into the corner over here. And then we'll have to remove the ribbon cable, the power ribbon cable, so remove that. And at the back of this cage, you'll see 3 flat Phillips head screws. These only go here, so remove those, put that to the side. Let's remove this little plate here that's off to the side. This has a little locating tab in it, so we'll dust this off, get all the dust out of that, and we're going to put this to the side as well. We'll lift off the top cover, and we'll see there's some thermal pads on the bottom here on these little tabs. So you need those thermal pads because they go on top of your RAM chips, but we'll clean all this up, avoid any dust, make sure it's all good, make sure those little thermal pads aren't dry. Just wipe off the board, get any little dust off of it. Some of the thermal pads may still be on the RAM chips, those little black chips. Don't lose them, you still need them. Just dust off any dust that's on there. Now we're going to remove the clamp that pulls the APU to the heatsink. Those use 2 Phillips screws as well, those Phillips ones. So just going to remove those, put them aside. We'll remove the tension plate and remove this other piece here. Clean that up if it's dusty, should be good to go there. Now we're going to remove the cable for the fan. Just wiggle that side to side and gently pull and it'll be unplugged. So now we can lift the board out. Be gentle, take your time. So we have the board out. What we're going to do, we're going to wipe down any dust that's on any parts here of the system itself. Just get any dust out of there because that's what we're doing here. Just wipe out any dust. I'm going to remove this bottom plate. It's going to be 3 Phillips screws that go in here as well. They're going to be small screws with a rounded top. is use the Phillips one as well to remove these. Now we're going to pull out the bottom plate. We're going to lift that up. It's going to expose the heatsink. So the heatsink is pretty much what blows air. The fan blows air through that in order to cool off the system. But let's use a toothbrush, any little paintbrush, whatever it be, to clean up any dust that may be on here. Sometimes you get a very thick piece of dust. Loosen that up, and if you have an air duster or compressed air or canned air, use that to blow any dust out as well. Just go over it. We're going to blow out the fan slightly, but we're going to make sure that we get the heatsink as clean as possible. I'm going to put the heatsink down, that bottom plate. I'm going to remove the fan. The fan itself on this model has one Phillips screw in it. Remove that screw, remove the fan. We're going to use our paintbrush, toothbrush, any type of brush that you may have, just to loosen up any dust that's on there. Sometimes it gets real stuck on there, so you need to loosen it up with any of these type of brushes, and then go over it with the compressed air or canned air. Don't let your fan spin, freely spin, because it can end up damaging the bearings. Like this, the air itself can spin it faster than the fan is actually meant to go. So be very mindful of that. I hold the fan in place and I just let it go slightly. Nothing too crazy enough to let it run by itself. So when we have that done, we're just going to wipe out the bottom portion here of any dust, anything that may be caked up. We're going to put our fan back in. There's a little locating hole that's on here. Then we're going to drop in our one Phillips screw on this model. Some of them have two, but one Phillips screw has an arrow over it to show you where it goes. Then we're going to put our bottom plate back in with the heatsink. Put that back in its place. There's little locating tabs in there as well. And then we're going to add our 3 Phillips screws back to where we took them out. Now we're going to clean off the old thermal paste that was on the bottom side of this heatsink. So we're going to take a microfiber cloth and some 91 to 99% isopropyl alcohol and just wipe it off. Sometimes you can get away without using alcohol, but this makes it as clean as possible. So use the alcohol, wet the rag, and slightly clean it off. You want to get that clean, no thermal paste, none of that dry stuff. Make sure it's smooth. We're also going to do the same thing for the APU on the board itself. So we're going to take the rag with some alcohol and we're going to clean that off the top. Make sure it's nice and clean. You'll be able to see the Sony logo, all the writing on it. Get off as much thermal paste as you can. If you have Q-tips, you can use that as well to go around the outside of the chip just to get up as much of the thermal paste that's there. But if you can't, don't worry too much about it. The main thing is to get it on top of, to get the top of the APU as clean as possible. Now we're going to add some thermal paste. This is Arctic Silver MX4. We're going to add like a pea-size amount of thermal paste on here, and that's about it. You can spread it if you want, but if you put it right in the center, you get a good size. It'll automatically spread out once you put the board back in. As we're doing here now, we're putting the board back into the case. We're laying it right back down where it was prior to. It's going to lay on top of the heatsink. We're going to plug in our fan at the side. Then we're going to add our plate first, this white plate. Then we're going to add the clamp on top. And then we're going to screw in the 2 screws, the 2 Phillips screws, big screws, either be all black or they'll be silver. But it's only 2 screws that look like this in the system. You're just going to screw that down hand tight each side. Don't use any tools, power tools to do this. Just take your time, screw it in until it stops. Once it stops, you're good to go. Now we're going to put our top plate back on, but we're going to make sure that our thermal pads are on here. So I have some that's on the bottom of this case and some that are still on the RAM chips. Just want to line those up, put it down, then we're going to screw in our screws. So for here I started with the 3 in the back, the 3 flat top Phillips screws, screw those in. I then added the shield that was on the side here. Like I said, it locates this little tab that puts it in its place. It'll lock into its place. I'm going to take those 2 little Phillips screws that go on the outer side closest to the edge and screw those in. I'll go and connect the power cable, the power ribbon cable, so just plug that in. Now I'll screw in all the other black screws out of here. See, I marked them off just to remember where they go. And if you didn't mark them off, just remember you can look through these holes and you'll see, if you see a little metal piece, then that means the black screws go into that hole. So it's metal into metal. The threads on these screws are a lot closer and a lot smaller. I'm going to take this little piece that we said only used for the power supply, and put that in its place, that little metal tab, and then we're going to put the black cover over that. There's little locating tabs on this one as well. You lay that down, and then we're going to add the 2 T8 screws into that hole. Once those are put in there, we're just going to add all the rest of the T8 screws that we took out. So just remember where you took everything out from and just put them back in. So once we have all those screws in, we're going to put on the top cover. But first, we have to put in our power button. So we're just going to slide that in, lift up that little tab, and it'll fall right into that little hole, and it's be in its place. Now we'll put the top cover on. We'll start from the back, pull it forward, and then push down in the front. You'll feel it snap into place. Once that snaps into place, we'll add the 2 T8 screws in this place so that could keep it locked in. Next, we're going to put in our hard drive. So we're going to slide that back in, and we're going to screw that down with the Phillips screw that has the PlayStation symbols on it. So that's the Phillips one. Screw that back in. Now we're going to put on the side that covers the hard drive, that slide it on, and just put it together. That's all that does. Now we're going to go flip the system over. We're just going to go over this with the air duster, just get any loose dust that may have fell to the bottom. Just clean it out. Now we're going to plug in these cables. We're going to start with the antenna. We're going to reroute that. You see these little clamps there. You're just going to line it up perfectly over the board and push it down. I'm going to start connecting all the ribbon cables for the Blu-ray drive. So one just slides in, push that down. We're going to plug in this cable that's all the way to the left. Let's just push this down. Now the one in the middle, we're going to make sure we lift up the connector to make sure it's standing up. Then we're going to push that in its place. Make sure it's seated properly. We're going to lift the connector first, and then push the connector down to lock it in its place. I'm going to blow out the power supply, make sure there's no dust inside there as well. I'm going to wipe it down too, make sure we get it completely cleaned, get off as much dust as possible. Now we're going to connect the small 5-volt cable to the side of the power supply. Just push it down in this place and everything's connected. We're going to screw in the 3 T8 screws that go into the power supply itself. We're going to add the metal shields to the back. It'll fit one way. Then we're going to put in the 2 long Phillips screws that were in the corners. I'm going to add the bottom cover now. Start from the front by the antennas, slide that in the front, and then push it down. Everything should line up. So after installing all my screws, I realized I left one screw out and I knew exactly where it was. I had to take the top cover off, and right behind the disk drive, there was one screw missing. So to finish off, we're going to add the 2 black T8 screws from the back of the PS5 just to lock in those casings. And then we are completely finished with this system. So these are the steps that you'll take to either tear down the system, or if your fan sounds like a jet engine, this is what you would do in order to clean it out. So if you have any questions, comments, leave it down below in the comment section. Subscribe if there's anything else you want to see, drop that down there as well, and I'll see you in the next one.